In this video, I'm going to take my years of architecture experience designing small spaces and share with you in ascending order my top 10 space-saving products and furniture items that somehow actually manage to make your small home bigger. Starting at number 10, Gateleg Tables are a fantastic space-saving furniture item as they fold down to the size of a console table using two hinged table leaves that are essentially propped up on what are two table legs that look and function like a gate, hence the name Gateleg. If you don't have space for a dining table in your home, these can be a great way to avoid eating on the sofa or on your kitchen counter, as they can be pushed up against a wall and simply folded out at mealtimes or simply whenever you need them, where the space in between these two table leaves are often also equipped with things like drawers or a space for folding chairs, and in my experience you can squeeze up to 6 people around tables like this. So if you already have a dining table in your home and you imagine for a moment that you could fold it down, that space could actually be used for so much, for things like workouts or bike repairs or furniture assembly. And on the flip side, if you don't have a dining table in your home, a table like this can squeeze in almost anywhere. However, a few things worth considering is that these things aren't always that light depending on what they're made out of, which can make the leaves rather difficult to hold up for some people before bending over and swinging out that gate leg underneath. And when you combine this additional weight with things such as drawers, it can make tables like these difficult to move out for guests if you do plan to keep them pushed up against a wall. And also on some versions, the location of the gate leg itself can make it quite uncomfortable to sit at, where you can end up bumping your knees or the bottom of your shins against the gate itself, which is why this table only makes it to number 10 on this list, despite being a really good solution. Coming in at number 9, chairs or stools that fold or stack can be huge for small spaces, and especially so when combined with something like a Gateleg table. But despite perhaps being perceived as a little bit vanilla compared to some of the other furniture items that are gonna come up later in this list, these can open up some pretty impressive solutions when used correctly. In certain circumstances, stacking stools really shine because they don't have a back, and because the seat's base is flat rather than angled like on a chair, you can use a stack of these as a side table if you're really short on space, which is really useful if you need some extra seats to occasionally whip out when guests stop by. My favourites have always been the Alto stools that were designed way back in 1933 by the world-renowned modernist architect Alvar Aalto, but as Artec has the licensing for these, they currently sell them for around €250 each. But seeing as they're made from a relatively simple bent wood construction, you can actually find 4-legged rather than 3-legged knockoffs of these floating around online, where I actually owned these in the past back when IKEA used to sell them too. But considering how IKEA has a bit of a bad reputation for alleged copyright infringement, this is probably why their current version looks a little bit different. But when it comes to chairs, folding mechanisms can be fantastic, as you can easily slot these inside of closets, cupboards, or even hang them. However, not many of them are all that stable or comfortable over long periods, unless you're willing to compromise a little bit on the weight and the aesthetic. If you're planning on having more than 4 of this type of chair, you're probably better off going down the stacking route, as a stack of chairs can take up almost the same amount of space as 4 folding chairs all lined up vertically, and they're often a lot more stable and comfortable too, as they don't have to factor in that hinge mechanism. This is why this is the route that I typically recommend, as you can get some really rather good looking and comfortable lightweight options at quite an affordable price, like IKEA's Udmund or their Teodores chairs, which are essentially a tweaked knockoff of the roughly $1,000 Norman Foster designed 2006 chairs by Amico. Or if you're going for a more rugged industrial aesthetic, you're unlikely to be disappointed by a replica Tolix chair, which is an undisputed design classic dating all the way back to 1927. Coffee to dining tables may perhaps be the perfect solution if you don't have space for a dining table but do have space for a coffee table, as they can essentially be both by being able to be set at different heights. You often tend to see two versions of this type of table, one that uses a hinge that moves part of the dining table surface up and outwards towards something like a sofa, or one that uses a hinge not too dissimilar from an ironing board to raise the entire table upwards. This first option is definitely cheaper, as you can pick these up at IKEA for under $200, and they have the benefit of bringing the table outwards towards your seating surface, which makes for a much more comfortable dining experience, as there's no way you're going to be able to scoot a whole sofa forwards like you would with a dining chair. However, they are limited by the fact that they can only do this on one side, which means that they're great for eating dinner next to someone like a partner, or if you're someone who's into eating dinner in front of your TV. However, they're not really that suitable for hosting. By comparison, the second ironing board style option raises the entire table vertically, with these often having the option to extend them too, either by folding the table open and rotating it, or by splitting it apart to add in new leaves that are concealed underneath the table's surface. This is actually the option that I ended up choosing for my 330 square foot London studio apartment, and despite these being fantastic for hosting, they can be a little bit heavy and clunky, which creates a bit of friction when lifting them up and down, especially as the wheels on the feet of the table don't tend to roll quite as easily on something like a rug, which is definitely something that you want as part of a living room setup. But there's no arguing that in some circumstances, these types of table can be ideal, as for a coffee table, this grants you a really generous surface for drinks, and it makes them probably one of the most inconspicuous ways to integrate a dining table into a small home. At number 7, storage sofas are a great way to save space in a home, as it can mean that you no longer need that extra chest of drawers or closet, as a lot of times they can swallow a ton of household clutter. I've found that these are great for less frequently used items such as tools, spare bedding, sports gear, and winter clothing, as they do often require a little bit of force to lift up their lids, which means that they're best used for items that you're not going to access every day. But once they're open, everything's super accessible and clearly visible because it's essentially a really inconspicuous box. So if you're a little bit lazy like me and you have a clutter or toy problem, you can really just toss in whatever you want here, as they seem to just swallow it up without creating too much of a fuss. The only downside is that it does tend to limit you when it comes to styles, because these don't tend to have legs, so they can have quite a big and heavy appearance. But on the flip side, if you do prefer the look of a sofa with legs, you can almost make these storage furniture themselves by using storage boxes underneath them, which can be almost invisible at eye level if you choose the right size and colour. This definitely isn't as practical as a dedicated storage sofa, but it's a great option nonetheless. So I'm going to roll this next one in with sofas at joint 7th and 6th place, as really it's the same idea, which is putting storage underneath the places that you sit or sleep on. Ottoman beds may actually be the least practical of the bunch, simply because of how big and heavy these mechanisms need to be to support the mattress, which makes them incredibly expensive too when compared to your typical bed frame. However, if you don't have the space around your bed for drawers to pull out, they definitely do have their place. Unlike with a sofa, drawers actually work better on bed frames, as they're usually made out of wood, and when it comes down to aesthetics, the bedroom is a little bit more versatile, as it's not really a space for hosting. Just like sofas with legs, storage boxes are great underneath budget bed frames, where you can even prop them up on furniture risers if you need more space underneath them. However, if you take this idea of storage beds to the extreme, it's hard to beat a DIY storage bed that's made up of several chests of drawers. This is something that some of you may remember I did using affordable IKEA Malm dressers back in our London studio apartment, which can essentially eliminate the need of additional wardrobe furniture entirely. Coming in at number 5 are Toekick drawers. This is where things get a little bit interesting, as for whatever reason, these never seem to come as standard in most kitchens, and I'm guessing many of you may have never even seen one of these before. These drawers are the solution to the wasted space that's underneath most kitchen cabinetry, where they're often raised on adjustable legs in order to deal with uneven floor surfaces and to accommodate a recessed toe kick, which allows space for your feet when working at the countertop. This wasted space beneath kitchen cabinetry seems to have been completely disregarded up until recently, as I suppose when housing was more affordable and abundant, wasting space down here wasn't really that much of a concern. But being the depth of a full-sized drawer across several kitchen cabinets, this is like the equivalent of an entire extra cabinet worth of space, which is something that I'm sure many homeowners would be grateful to have in their kitchens. For the most part, you tend to see Toekick drawers used mostly for things like pet bowls, as they're things on the floor that you don't really want on show all the time. However, there's no reason that you can't install drawers like this for really anything, as long as you're comfortable with the items that are inside being close to the floor. As far as I'm aware, the only downside is that these aren't really products that you can simply pick up off the shelf and fit underneath your cabinets. However, seeing as most Toekick cover panels are simply snapped onto the legs of the cabinets behind them, as a quick and dirty DIY hack, I can't see why you couldn't easily take these Toekick cover panels off and place boxes with drawer fronts attached to them underneath your cabinets, which is something that I'm actually in the process of experimenting with in my own kitchen. Now, before we get into my final three, I have to reel off a few honourable mentions. Firstly, in the name of hardware, as when it comes to affordable furniture on a budget, there is little else that is as effective as a little bit of DIY furniture hacking. With access to just a drill and a screwdriver, it's pretty incredible what you can come up with to make a small home function more effectively. With hardware such as collapsible shelf brackets that are capable of bearing up to 150 kilograms for wall-mounted tables or desks, or heavy-duty caster wheels that can turn almost any piece of furniture, like a crib or a nightstand, into something that's mobile. Or if you're really willing to spend a little bit more, you can even get pull-down shelves that make the top shelves of your kitchen cabinetry far more accessible, so you can actually reach the items at the back without having to go and get hold of a stepladder. Now to my top three, where of course we're starting in one of the most underutilized rooms, the bedroom. Also known as wall beds or disappearing beds, Murphy beds got their name from William Lawrence Murphy around 1900, where, according to legend, he was wooing an opera singer while living in a one-room apartment in San Francisco. At the time, it was frowned upon for an unmarried woman to enter into a man's bedroom, so Murphy came up with this ingenious solution of simply folding his bed out of sight. Today, the concept is really no different if you're living in a studio apartment. However, these are better than ever with options for gas strut or sprung mechanisms, which make folding them away not much harder than closing a cupboard with one finger. What this means is that you can basically put a bed anywhere as long as it has some open space in front of it, making them perfect for integrating with other furniture items like sofas or low coffee to dining tables, or furniture that you can simply wheel out of the way when you want to get your bed out. However, the reason that you don't really tend to see these very often is because firstly, they can be eye-wateringly expensive, as these mechanisms need to be able to counterbalance the weight of the mattress and bear the weight of two sleeping human beings, all whilst being hidden from view in what is essentially a very big custom-made wardrobe, which is something that isn't that cheap to begin with. This means that the mechanism often needs to be bolted to the wall and or the floor, making them almost completely unsuitable for renters, who are arguably the one target market that needs them the most. So this of course lowers demand, which makes it hard for manufacturers to justify these as a viable product, meaning that the people who do end up making them end up having to charge a lot as they don't benefit from the same cost savings that come with making a more popular product at scale. But with all this said, this is still a genius product, and there's some good news in that developers are starting to see the benefits of marketing studio and one-bedroom apartments with solutions like these already fitted, which means that if you're in the market for a small apartment in a big city, it's a lot more likely that you're going to start seeing a rise in this type of bed's popularity. At number 2 are extending dining tables. Now, these are actually nothing new, as it's quite common for a lot of dining tables to split apart to conceal 1 or 2 additional leaves inside of them. However, there are products that take this a step or several further by going from the size of a console all the way up to seating 10 people. I first saw these come onto the scene way back in 2013, when featured in Graham Hill's Life Edited apartment in New York City, that was beautifully documented by Kirsten Dirksen 10 years ago now. This was a space that also utilised a Murphy bed, but this apartment had another trick up its sleeve in seating 10 people around this monster of a dining table using heavy-duty telescopic rails to support the additional leaves that are hidden in a closet nearby. Much like Murphy beds, these are also a pretty expensive solution. However, they don't require any drilling or fixing, so really they can easily fit into any space, meaning that they can stay with you wherever you move if you do eventually upsize, and even if they end up being fully extended, they're perfectly fine staying that way permanently. Also, you can get solutions such as coffee tables to conceal the additional leaves should you not have a closet or cupboard nearby to store them in, and you can even get a matching bench that takes care of half of the seating too. And considering how small all of this shrinks down to, it's a pretty effective solution should you ever want to host a dinner party, which is usually a luxury that's only reserved for much larger spaces. But coming in at my number 1 pick is unsurprisingly the daybed, which you might have spotted camouflaged in this room right behind me. Unlike a very effective solution like a Murphy bed, a daybed extends along its side rather than folding at its head. However, because it doesn't require any drilling or fixing to walls or floors, it's compatible in pretty much any home. And the mattresses also serve as the base of what is a sofa, meaning that you essentially get 2 pieces of furniture in one, making them incredible value for money. This is incredibly efficient not only financially but also spatially, as when it's in bed mode, it's the equivalent of a king-size bed using 2 twin mattresses, which then stack on top of one another and store all of the bedding, a sofa cover and pillows in 2 drawers beneath them, which ensures that not 1 square inch of this furniture item goes wasted. We've been using this setup for a few weeks now, and we are completely sold on it, as this bedroom was pretty much entirely redundant before we made the switch, whereas now it's pretty much created a whole new room in our home, which I can comfortably work and record my videos in, which is something that would have cost us thousands of dollars in rent should we have gone for a larger 3-bedroom apartment instead. When viewing things this way, considering that the price is around just $300 to $400 for a frame, when compared to the cost of renting an apartment with an extra bedroom, this furniture has easily paid itself off already in just 2 weeks, allowing us to pour the funds from the savings we're making into things that we may not have been able to enjoy otherwise.